I'm going to address my questions to Ms. Menza, but I want to create some context here first. You know, Syria was a predominantly Christian country until about the 5th century, when the Islamic conquest of Syria started and culminated in about the 13th century. And ever since then, it's been a living hell for all humanity that has lived under the religion of the so-called religion of peace. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter for the record a series of videos that I have received, and I would like the committee to have on record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been said that Mr. Assad has been unable to protect minorities, and I want to make the case that he's not unable, he's, correction, not Mr. Assad, Mr. al-Shara, that he's not unable, that he's unwilling. Because as former, HTS is wandering around and Mr. Jelani rebranded Al-Qaeda is not a whole lot different than ISIS. It's not a whole lot different. Let's face it, if you had a choice between ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which one would you really choose? Is there a whole lot of difference? And I know that HTS has said, that they renounced global jihad, but they haven't renounced jihad in Syria. They haven't renounced that at all. And so to set the context of, because people talk about violence here, but they don't know what it looks like. So we're going to play a video, and I'm going to just tell you up front, if you don't want to see things that are shocking and barbaric, turn your eyes away. It's about 40 seconds, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, ma'am. Go ahead and play the video, please. It'd be great if it had the sound, because they're rejoicing over these women that they have killed. And it's not enough to kill them. You have to desecrate their bodies. Doesn't look like much of a fighter to me. Neither does she. Now, she's still alive. This one right here. She's still alive. And they're talking about, oh, she's still alive. Well, not anymore. This is life in Syria for minorities. Not some fancy picture where we all hope it's going to get better. You can trim the beard of an Islamist and you can dress him up in a suit and send him around the world. I think we're foolhardy to believe that he's anything other than an Islamist. Madam Menza, tell me I'm wrong.
Islamist Syrian security forces themselves recorded and circulated evidence of horrific crimes against Kurds, including beheadings, even of women fighters, execution of families, female fighters' body thrown from a building, rape, torture, including the gouging out of eyes. Alawites faced horrific large-scale killings in March 2025 with entire neighborhoods targeted. Men, women, and children. Some reported deaths of around 1,500. But most believe the toll is far higher, and of course, violence continues. Jewish communities in Soweto faced staggering violence in July. Reported mass killings likely higher than the 1,600 reported, with abductions and disappearances, sexual violence, mass displacement of at least 120,000. 4 civilians were executed over the weekend, and there's been an expanded siege in the last few days. Christians were targeted in the June 22nd suicide bombing of Mar Elias Church in Damascus, reportedly by ISIS, killing at least 25 and wounding over 60.
I think the United States of America, the world, and the Syrian people themselves are all hungry for Syria to turn the page from years of Syrian conflict and despot leaders to a country that adds to the region, adds to the world instead of detracting from it. A country that invites back in those who fled instead of creating more refugees. I don't believe that any of us thought transitions from the dictator Bashar al-Assad to now Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara would be without incident. But we've already seen too many incidents, in my opinion. Too many incidents of sectarian violence against religious and ethnic minorities. There are a wide range of challenges faced in Syria in order to reach a peaceful democratic governance. I can tell you that I had the opportunity to meet with Syrian president. We spoke about a number of things. There are ongoing challenges, including the presence of foreign fighters within the security forces, many of them backed by Turkey. We've seen the recent actions against the Syrian Democratic Forces, our long-standing counterterrorism partner and Kurdish ally. That is unacceptable. There have been actions against the SDF that forced CENTCOM to relocate 7,000 ISIS fighters from detention facilities across Syria and move them into Iraq. Also of serious concern, Russia has maintained a continual presence. We don't know entirely why. Perhaps that's because they are still harboring Bashar al-Assad, the ousted Syrian president, and the Syrian people want him back for justice. We can't be sure, but it's definitely an issue that we need to contend with. And we all know the current Syrian president is a former al-Qaeda fighter. These are all serious points of concern. When I met with President al-Shara last November, I asked him very directly, why are he and I no longer enemies? Me as a U.S. soldier, him as an al-Qaeda fighter. And his response was that he wishes to liberate himself from his past and have a noble pursuit for his people and his country. When he met with President Trump the next day and joined the global coalition to defeat ISIS, that was a glimmer of hope. But the fact is, Syria is nowhere close to where they need to be today. The United States is not satisfied with the progress that he has made yet and views many of his actions as steps backward. We need President al-Shara to do better. These are not easy things to deal with, but recent actions against Druze, Kurds, and Alawites are all steps in the wrong direction. They do not create confidence for the United States in President al-Shara's desire to create, as he said to me, a noble future for the Syrian people, as he said he wanted to do. President al-Shara does not have a blank check from the United States of America. The United States repealed the Caesar sanctions because the reason for them to exist, which was the presence of Bashar al-Assad, that reason no longer existed. But we made it clear that conditions must be met in exchange. Those conditions include advancing military integration, protecting religious and ethnic minorities, as well as their integration into the Syrian government, and working with the United States to combat terrorists. Congress was pleased to see the recent integration deal signed by Syrian President al-Shara and SDF General Mazloum, whom I was happy to meet with in this past January, which was a step in the right direction. But this is the third of its kind to be signed, and the United States expects action, not empty words. The goal of today's hearing is to examine the challenges Syria faces and the implications for U.S. national security interests if Syria does choose to go down the wrong path.
Yet another brutal. And while I am optimistic and supportive of the Syrian people working toward a new future, I am also deeply concerned by recent violence against ethnic and religious minority communities. Incidents such as last April's brutal violence against the Druze communities in Swawada, which killed dozens of civilians and damaged several homes, and continued attacks against both Syrian Christians and Druze underscores the insecurity plaguing Syria's transition. Last June's ISIS attack against the Malias Orthodox Church that killed over 30 worshipers and injured dozens more is yet another brutal reminder of the threats Syrian minorities face. Additionally, I'm concerned for Syria's Kurdish communities and the situation they face after years of their courageous partnership with the United States of America. The Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, served as critical counterterrorism partners in operations against ISIS, proving an effective and capable force. But once again, the Kurdish people are facing violence at the hands of Damascus-based security forces, including as recently as just last month. I'm encouraged by the January 30th agreement between Damascus and the SDF, but need to see commitment from President Shara to implement it and rein in the abuses of certain units. Finally, as June's attack on the Orthodox Church and another attack last December that killed 3 U.S. personnel show, ISIS has been degraded but must be fully eliminated so as to no longer pose a threat to the Syrian government, as well as to Syrian civilians or U.S. interests and partners in the region. To be clear, eliminating ISIS is not purely a military matter. Stabilization and development efforts must also provide alternatives and livelihoods for those who are too often ripe targets for ISIS recruitment, especially families and youth in Syria's impoverished rural areas. But the Trump administration's destruction of USAID has crippled those efforts. So I'm keen to explore ways in which we in Congress can act to support those goals. In short, while I stand with the Syrian people in turning the page toward a new future, we must see President Sharaf keep to his word of being a president for all Syrians and ensure Syria's ethnic and religious minorities are safe and fully represented.